All right, episode 107 of Pursuit of Balance with your host, Corey Mayu. We're going to talk about the easiest way to guarantee you never see results in your life. And I have to throw a disclaimer out there because Evan wanted me to. There's construction going on around this entire building right now. There's jackhammers and concrete pounders. I'm not that sure if that's the name of the tool. But so if the camera shakes a little bit, you hear some weird tools going on in the background, forgive us. But then again, you guys always hear gym equipment. You just heard that barbell drop probably. You hear coaches yelling or laughing. So there's always stuff going on in the background. So we'll be fine. We'll be fine. So today what we're talking about is basically this element of consistency, right? And I was having a conversation with a client over DMs, and I think he asked me, like, how do you maintain being so lean? And I was like, I trained for 17 years, 5 days a week, and I never missed a week. Right? And that's also a little bit of a lie. I missed some weeks here and there, some days here and there. But really the element of the conversation was just like, hey, consistency is really the secret recipe, right? So I was going down this rabbit hole last night when I was thinking about, like, what do I want to do for today's podcast? And I was like, maybe I should just talk about this consistency piece because there's so many people that I know that lack consistency in every area of their life. Like the reason why they haven't moved up in their jobs, the reason why they haven't progressed personally in a personal growth perspective, the reason why their fitness is the same, the reason why their bodies look the same, the reason why their mental health is the same. And a lot of it is this element of not being consistent with the work over a long period of time. So I want to go through the reasons today of, like, why is something that consistency is such a hard thing for so many people? Why do people play the game of thinking about the end result all the time and playing in this short time frame mentally, and obviously how that affects it? And then, like, what are the things that cause someone to not be consistent, right? But before I go into the consistency conversation, the one thing that I do want to bring to everyone's attention is you can still be consistent over a very long period of time and still not see results. And that is an element of you not doing the right thing or not having enough intensity behind it. And it's the same way we program anything, right? It's like when I program workouts for someone, the consistency of them doing the workout, step one, the biggest piece to it. But then the intensity behind what they're doing, what they're actually doing, and obviously the volume of what they're doing matters too. So there is other elements of this conversation, but I just want to kind of keep today's focus more around, like, the consistency piece, right? So when you think about the consistency, it's like, well, why do I lack consistency? Like, the things that I'm not consistent with in my life, I think about, like, I get bored, or I get distracted, or I stop seeing results, or maybe I'm on the wrong plan, or maybe I lack accountability, or maybe I just think I got shiny object syndrome and I want to try something new because I don't think this thing is working. And, like, even I'm going through this right now with kind of rehabbing my back. My back's been in a really bad place lately. So I kind of started going to a chiropractor again. A lot of the stuff I feel like they've been giving me is, like, super basic. So I'm trying to have an element of, like, giving enough trust to the professional because that's what I pay the people for. But also of, like, am I just really not in the greatest place because maybe I think that I'm more advanced than I am and I should just be doing the basics more often, more consistently, and that's the thing that maybe has been causing me to do X, Y, and Z. So there's areas of life where I think this kind of shows up in so many different things, right? So, like, number one, when you think about boredom, right? So if I were to just start off the conversation with, like, okay, well, a lot of people probably get distracted or boredom, or, like, have some level of boredom, or have, like, shiny object syndrome. And I think about this in relationships too a lot, right? Like, why are divorce rates so high? Why do so many people, like, join gyms and then try a new gym or switch programs, for those of them that are even doing it? Like, why are so many people always switching jobs? Or, there's a lot of this, like, hopping around relationships and work and, personal growth and exercise. And where does that come from? Like, what is that? What is the root cause for someone to think that the next thing will be better? And this is kind of this, like, grass is greener theory. The shiny object syndrome is basically this concept that we think what we're doing now is going to be better somewhere else. And then you get to the next relationship or the next job or the next thing, and then you start to become bored or you start to become distracted, and then you go right back to square one, and then you just jump from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And then you realize after looking back a decade or, a long period of time that you're like, wow, like, I really haven't made as much growth as I would have liked to. Or would I have made more growth sticking with the same thing, doing that over a longer period of time, and having that structure more consistently? Would that have given me a better result? And I would say for the majority of everyone, we're not doing the basics long enough. We always think that doing something new is going to be better. But with that being said, that is a mindset issue, right? And this is something I talk to my fiance a lot of, like, as we talk in conversations, just being in a relationship with my family or my friends or my coworkers, like, I used to, when I was young and more immature than I am now, be the type of person that would just, like, if something's going wrong or something's tough or a conversation I don't really want to have, it was very easy for me to just be closed off and be like, fuck it, get out of my life. Like, just get out. Like, I don't, like, really want to deal with it, so I would just remove it from my life. And I don't want to do that in a relationship, and I don't want to do that with people that I love around me. So that comes with, like, this process of kind of, like, I don't know, eating shit and having tough conversations and being uncomfortable and not being right all the time, which is something that I struggle with because I always like being right. And that comes with a lot of, obviously, sacrifice and adjustment for you. But knowing that, okay, if I look at this thing over the course of a lifetime, like, is it always going to be fun? No. Is there ways that I can make it more enjoyable and more fun for me? Absolutely. That's the environment, that's the people, that's your mindset and how you perceive the thing. How do I minimize distractions? I think some of the best people in the world, they get really, really good at one thing or a couple things because they eliminate everything else around them, right? Like, they eliminate the noise. Something that I struggle with as far as growth goes in a lot of my hobbies is, like, I like doing a lot of different things and modalities, and even inside of fitness. Like, I've never been really, really great at one thing, and that's because I've been good at a lot of things because I like doing a lot of things. But if I were to think about if I wanted to be really, really good at one thing, so that's also just like a mindset conversation to have. Like, if that's something that you desired for yourself, you need to understand that the amount of time and skills and hours and energy and sacrifice that it takes to get to where you actually want to be requires you doing so much of that thing that it's impossible, just based off the amount of time in your day, to do a lot of things really well. So you have to eliminate all the other shit in the beginning, right? So you have to stay focused on that thing. But I think that comes back to, like, a mindset perspective, right? So coming back to this relationship example is, like, I told Nikki, I was like, you know what, I don't want to be someone that ever has a divorce. I don't think anybody goes in a relationship saying that, but there will be moments in our relationship that we maybe foresee or have guesses, like when we're future parents together or over time, or we're going to have disagreements. We already have very different styles with a lot of things so far. But that will never be anything that we need to make sure that we're not running away from each other, that this is something that we can butt heads, we can have our differences, but us consistently moving forward as a couple to grow together is going to require a lot of work. Me consistently getting better in the gym, me consistently getting better at work, me making more money, me getting leaner, whatever the goal might be for somebody or yourself, you need to understand that doing that over a long period of time requires you taking a mindset and a perspective change. That, number one, stop playing the game in hours and days and weeks and start playing the game in years and decades and a lifetime. When you look at things over a long horizon, like I forget who says this quote. I don't know if it's, who is it? I want to say it was Bill Gates, but maybe I'm just making that up. Like, people overestimate, maybe it was, what's that famous investor called? I don't know. I'm blanking now. But people overestimate what they're going to do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I love that quote because, like, if you think about what I've done in a year, I'm like, okay, I actually had a pretty good year. I opened up a new business. I hired a new team. I got engaged. Like, so I actually did do a lot of stuff this year. But also, when I look at over the course of it in a year, I'm like, wow, like, I've done a lot of stuff as far as personal growth goes, as far as business, as far as my relationship, as far as, so many areas of life. But so when you start thinking about this game that we're playing, life, and you start looking at it in decades, in a very long period of time, multiple decades at a time, you change your perspective of what you expect out of the thing because you're just looking at it a different perspective. But the most important perspective change is, what if the game did not have an end? What if the game didn't have a finish line? What if the game didn't have any type of end product that you were searching for? What if the goal was just the idea of the process and the idea of creation and the idea of just getting better? And if you focused on the only goal that I have is just getting better than what I'm currently doing now, and that's better at my job, that's better in my relationships, that's better with myself, that's better with my fitness, that's better with my food, and then when you look at it a long period of time and understand that there's cycles to it too, that yes, maybe in the course of a year I only got 1% better, but there was times where I got 10% better, there was times where I got 5% worse, there was times where I got 20% worse, there was times that flatlined. Like understanding that process and the willingness to just accept some of the cycles of down and ups, that ups don't last forever and downs don't last forever, and it's all just about how you approach those things, I think kind of changes the mindset and the perspective towards the idea of consistency. Because if I knew that I loved what I did when I first started this, I loved who I'm with when I first started dating her, I loved the job that I had when I first started it, that the only thing that's going to make me really, really good at that thing is sticking with it forever and just remaining consistent and doing the thing and doing it over and over and over and over again. And trying to do my best to remove boredom or remove distraction or, all the other things I'm kind of talking about. That's the thing that's going to make you really, really, really successful, right? So when you think about this idea of motivation for people, like why do people lose consistency? Well, a lot of people lose motivation. Okay, well, let's keep digging deeper. Why would you lose motivation in life? Well, most of the time motivation is lost because there is a lack of results. With a lack of results, a lack of work, there is a lack of motivation, right? And that is just like from a neurochemical side, like you are not getting the same dopamine hit. Like dopamine is this idea of achieving something. It's not even the idea of achievement. It's a mix of achievement and achieving, meaning the process of growing towards. So, this is something I tell coaches when we're talking about our stuff. Is like, hey, we want to work with clients that get this nice neurochemical boost of dopamine because they feel like they're working towards something. So this idea of creation, this idea of work, this idea of process is super important for the element of consistency. But then the idea that we also need to have wins, small or big, or some type of achievements, things that we have that are like, I love using video games as an example for this because I think video games are in social media too, but video games even more. Like, look how addicting they are, right? And that could be good or bad. That's a different conversation. But this idea of like, I'm moving up in status or rank, I'm leveling, I beat level 1, I'm on to level 2, I'm working to a harder boss. Like, I'm just briefly explaining how probably most games are structured. That is an addicting thing. A new game, a new level, a new map, a new unlock. These are all the things from the psyche side of things that keep us going. So consistency is also still has growth within it. It's not consistently just doing the same thing and not growing. This is where a lot of people run into the lack of motivation. I am consistent with working out. I'll give you an example for me personally. I've never not worked out consistently, right? I've always, I have breaks here and there, vacations, sickness, like normal shit. But for the most part, like I love working out and I love the way it makes me feel mentally and physically and all aspects of life. So I don't ever want to stop working out. But if I were to tell you that I've lost a little bit of my drive as far as like what I'm getting out of the workouts, I definitely have. I think it's tapered down a little bit. Like when I was training for competitions, I always had something to look forward to. I always had something to strive towards. I always had this element of like, yes, I'm fucking just hungry to wake up and go do the thing because I knew that I was working towards an achievement. And then I would do the thing. I would have the competition. I would have whatever it was. And then you kind of like, okay, take a little bit of mental break. And then you're like, what's next? So when I got out of that period of sporting or competition and just kind of working out to work out, there was this kind of like quietness and calm in my mind in the beginning of like, okay, we're just working out to work out. But I do feel like it's important. Like I was doing a mock fit start with Amanda today, and it's like it's part of our sales training, and I was being myself, and I wasn't lying as I was saying it. I was like, you know what? Like I don't have even structure as far as like knowing what I'm growing to. So like even though I'm doing the class workouts, I don't track my weights, and so that element of progressive overload is not really objective. It's kind of like it's a go by feel type of thing. I think it's a great way to lose motivation with your training. So in order for you to stay consistent, you need to keep motivation high. In order to keep motivation high, you need to do things that drive results. And in order to do things that drive results, you need to be, obviously you have the right knowledge, you need to be on the right plan, and you need to be accountable to it. So the system that you use to create consistency or the plan of attack, then those two things run parallel to each other, right? Because me being consistent is one thing. Me having a good plan is one thing. Me being accountable to the plan is the element of consistency within the plan. But once those two things connect really well together and they work together, those are the things that are going to help drive motivation, right? Now it's like, well, how do I remove boredom? Well, it's like, how do I make a video game more exciting? It's like, the achievement is something that's fun. It's like, okay, well, I wanted to work toward a sub 5 minute mile. And I run and I run and I train and I run and I run and I train and I train. And like I go on and on and on and I eventually do it. That's fun. The act of going towards the goal and the act of achieving the goal. So it's the same thing that you run with kind of boredom is a same element of how do I keep things fun. Now, removing distractions, I think it takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of time to realize that, like, what in life is really worth being distracted by. I think eventually you kind of get burnt out from even chasing those things. Like, I was thinking about that when you're in relationships. Like, why are, cheating and divorce rates, why are so many people with infidelity struggling with these kind of things? And I think, like, social media plays a big role. I actually just saw a podcast on this the other day. But it's the same thing with working out. People see one thing on the fucking internet, and I have a client being like, I'm doing this new thing because I saw this guy do this, or hey, I'm doing this new diet because I saw this new doctor on a podcast. And we're overstimulated with information and content and just like that, media in general. And that is a very easy way to create a distracted environment for you to no longer be consistent. You might think you're being consistent by always doing something, but you're always switching different things on and off. And that's basically ruining the element of, like, the consistency of that modality that you might be doing. So I think removing distraction from life comes with time. Like, when I first opened up the business, I almost opened up a second location within the first year. It was like 12 to 18 months. Thank fucking God I didn't, because I didn't have the business maturity yet. I didn't have the finances to be able to do it. I just thought, oh, this thing's growing, let's just keep doing it. Then I was like, I'm going to open up a meal prep business. And I just got, like, almost so distracted so fast. And I think a lot of times, like, this idea of a serial entrepreneur is like this idea of someone being really great at one thing or trying to be really great at a lot of things. I don't think the guy that has one business that puts all his energy into one business is most likely going to be more successful than the guy that puts 5 businesses in his plate and tries to split up his energy between all 5 of those. Now, that being said, someone that's a newbie that obviously goes into a business with one business only versus the guy that's a professional, that's more of a serial entrepreneur, that has a lot of skills, that has the background and the knowledge to be able to do it, sure, there might be elements of context to that. But for the most part, it's like, if I just put my energy into one thing, I naturally am going to be a lot better at that thing, right? So when I think about whatever, like, business and like endeavor I'm going through, or whatever, like, fitness thing I'm trying to focus on for myself or my relationship, like, getting the distractions out of the way and focusing on the one thing and making the one thing allows me to become a lot better at that thing. But it's hard because when something doesn't work, where do I draw the line in the sand of knowing this consistency is something I still need to work towards, or am I actually just doing the wrong thing, right? So, for example, I knew I wanted to open up a gym when I was 16. I tried convincing my parents when I was 18 years old to give me money to open up a CrossFit gym because there was a location right across the street from where I was working that I thought was perfect. I had zero experience as far as running a business. I had maybe less than a year of experience with sales and some level of management. I just got into it, but, like, that was just that young, cocky, teenager fucking energy of, like, I can fucking do anything, right? And I still have an element of that, but I've also come with a little bit more of maturity and understanding of, like, okay, it's not as easy as we always make it sound. But then I didn't open up a gym for another 6 years, even though I knew about it when I was 16 or 17, right? So it's like I went 2 years into knowing my goal, and then I went an additional 7 years before I actually even executed on my goal. And I knew I needed enough money, or knew how to get and raise money. I needed enough maturity to feel confident to be able to go do that thing, and confidence that comes with that. And I needed the skills to be able to run a business as far as how do I sell, how do I manage, how do I train, how do I do all those things. And once I was confident enough, then I was able to go do it. Then, once I felt confident enough, for 2 years, so over 100 weeks of the business, I made $0 and paid myself $0 even through a paycheck. I'm not talking about, like, no profit. I'm talking about I just made no money. That's hard because I was making 6 figures at Equinox being a trainer working for somebody else and not having to worry about any of the other bullshit. So how do I convince myself to just keep going on that thing? Social media was always something that I wanted to grow, wanted to keep focused on. I've done over, I don't know, between mine and Functional Lifestyles, probably 6,000 or 7,000 posts. I've made $0. I'm on my 107th episode of podcast, and I've made $0. And it's not that I'm doing it for the intent and money, but I'm just showing that, like, a lot of times what people think the intention or byproduct of the intention is, it takes a lot fucking longer to get there than most people think or give it credit for. So the idea of just being consistency, I think, like, comes from, like, I love doing the podcast because I like talking about things that make people better, have put people in better positions to be more successful with their health, with their money, with their mind, whatever it might be. I like doing the content on Instagram for the exact same reason, right? I love running my business, and it's like now it's like cool. Now I make money. Now I make more money than I did at Equinox. It's like so now it's like looking 7.5 years back in time. It's easier to justify it, but also this comes back to my earlier point that if I looked at it in this grand scheme of things over the course of a decade, it's like, oh wow, I've made a lot of success for myself, right? So don't play such a short-minded thing, right? But then also this idea that like I wanted to retire earlier than my dad. My dad, worked at PG&E, retired at 42, 44 years old at a very young age. Even though he, technically still worked for himself, he was self-employed, so I don't call it as full retired as he does. I always thought I was like, cool, I'm going to be retired before him. I was just going to beat my dad, kind of the competitive juices. But then as I started working, and over the last 5 years, I've been like, you know what? The longest living people work and have purpose. Why would I want to stop working? Why not want to just find something that fuels the purpose? Find something that I love, right? And this is where I think this comes with helping with consistency. Like my fiance and I just got back from Maui. We were talking about like how I was excited to be back at work, and she was like, she always gets the Sunday scaries, and the reason why is like she likes her job, she's good at her job, she doesn't love her job. I love my job, right? I love my friends, I love my hobbies, I love my fiance, I love my I have a deeper connection towards the things that I do where it allows me to stay consistent because I love doing it. So if you don't love something, that's a deeper question that you need to figure out on why you don't love things. Is the thing that we're talking about unlovable or not for you? Or are you the problem and you don't have enough love for yourself and you have a terrible mindset on how you approach everything in life, and maybe you're the fucking problem, which is, to be honest with you, a lot of people's cases. So I think like the more that we can take this perspective change towards I'm doing it forever, there is no end game. I'm playing the game now in decades in my lifetime because there is no end game because of that. I'm doing it because I love it. I'm doing it knowing that I'm never going to quit it. Why would I get mad at it, right? That's something I try to remind myself. I have like the worst road rage. I'm like in the top 1% of road ragers for sure. Maybe top 5. I don't run over people or anything. But I get there and I'm like, if I know traffic's going to be here every time I go home Tuesday to Thursday, why do I get mad? So it's easier for me some days, not all the days, definitely not perfect, where I can have this kind of acceptance towards like, okay, I knew it was going to be here. I can't get mad at something I knew was going to be here. I do get mad when I get blindsided with things in life. Like when I was doing the build out for both gyms, I got blindsided with this. Oh, this costs $10,000. This is going to be an extra month. It's like, fuck. And that shit would piss me off because I don't like being blindsided. I like knowing what's coming. But also, the same conversation I would give myself is if I know it's coming, if you know random shit or hardship is going to come through in your life, why would you get mad at something that you know is going to show up eventually, right? And it gives you this kind of acceptance. And it gives you this reality change of like, that's part of it. That's part of the process. Like, this is one of those quote-unquote cycles. The stock market has cycles. Everything in life has a cycle. And when you learn to appreciate the cycle, you learn to ride the wave, you learn to understand that, just like the ocean with the waves, there's going to be big sets, there's going to be small sets, there's going to be windy days, there's going to be rainy days. Like, it's just all part of the natural cycle of human life. You learn to appreciate, I think, every part of that journey because it gives you a lot more acceptance on it. But then understand that like the things that most people, lack consistency on too, with the accountability piece like I was talking about, is use your environment to your advantage. Hire professionals. Recruit your significant other and family. Recruit your friends and roommates. Like, get your coworkers to do things with you, right? Like, the more you can build a tribe, once again, the easiest way to hack your life and change everything about it is to change your environment. Because your environment will change your mindset, right? Like, if you're having a hard time changing your mindset by yourself, it's because A, it's hard to do by yourself, or B, you just have a shitty, environment around you. If I have a bunch of lazy people around me, it's very easy for me to want to feel lazy and hard to be motivated towards work. So putting yourself around the right people in the right places and right environments is also one of those good hacks that we have for consistency. So remember, consistency over time is the recipe for how results are. Results equals consistency over time. But that's also over the course of the correct plan with accountability. So there's elements to this equation for results. But when you want results in your life, you have to remember, like, there is someone that's done it twice as long as you or 10 times as long as you. There's someone that's probably putting 10 times the amount of work or 100 times the amount of work than you are. So don't get down on yourself when you're not getting results. Keep reevaluating the process of, am I doing the right thing? And how do I stay consistent with it and fall in love with it and not be distracted from it, right? All right, guys. Well, hope you get some good little nuggets out there as always. I will see you guys next Friday for episode 108. Take care.